Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. Today, let's talk all about the traffic pyramid and how you can get unlimited traffic to your stuff. So I have brought on Deirdre Tshien, and she's just like a super impressive serial entrepreneur who is crushing it. And really knows her stuff. And so we're going to be talking all about the traffic pyramid. So what I need from you is think of an entrepreneurial friend that you can share this episode with. It's a good one. So make sure you share it and let's dive in. Hey, Deirdre, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to chat. So tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yes. So my name's Deirdre. I am the CEO and co-founder of Capsho, which is the world's first AI-powered podcast copywriter.
Wow.
So literally in under 10 minutes, you upload an audio file and it creates episode title, description, show notes, social media captions, promotional email, blog post, YouTube description, LinkedIn article, like everything.
That's awesome.
To promote your podcast. It does. So yeah, super cool.
That's amazing. Okay, so there's probably a backstory. How'd you get into that?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to try to really speed it up because, gosh, my journey, 9 years in there's been a lot of detours. I started in entrepreneurship in hospitality, actually. So my husband and I opened a dessert bar in Sydney, in Australia. We grew that to 5 locations. We opened a burger restaurant as well, grew that to 2 locations. And then at the end of 2018, we found out one of our store managers had been stealing from us, like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh my gosh.
And so at that point, we were like 5 years into, this journey. And I was like, it kind of took that moment for me to be like, is this what we want to be doing? Is this the path that we really want to be on?
Yeah.
And for me, I've always wanted to live and work overseas, and I just love experiencing new places and new lifestyles and things like that. And so I was like, you know what? Stuff it. I know we have these brick and mortar stores, but we're going to make this work and let's just move. Let's move. For us, we chose New York to the States. So, and there's a couple of reasons why we chose New York as well. One of them, a primary one, was at the time I was actually exploring a fashion technology idea with another co-founder, someone I'd met in corporate. And so I was like, well, what better place than New York City to explore
For
this
sure.
fashion technology idea? So mid 2019, we packed up. We did spend about 6 months kind of systemizing, our stores and making sure that our team was set and, everything was good. And we packed up and left. And so I came to New York. So it was 3 years ago now. My husband and my co-founder as well came, and my cat, of course. And so we hit the ground running. We tested that idea, failed it. 4 months in, and we're like, oh my gosh, okay, well, we're in this new city, which is not a cheap place to live as well. We needed this thing to work. Like, we need to start earning revenue. What are we going to do now? And fortunately, I actually ran into this old acquaintance of mine, and I didn't even know he'd moved to New York. And he was actually helping to a chocolate company. He was actually helping it expand in the US. And specifically, he had the actual brand had about 3 brick and mortar stores in New York. And he was like, but I really, really want to get online. Can you guys help me do that? And we're like, sure. I mean, we've never really done it before, but yeah, we'll just give it a go. And so we did. And we helped build an online presence in the first year. I think that brand did 2 million in revenue, and it's just grown since then. So anyway, so we kind of fell into agency work, helping e-commerce business owners, transition into coaching because agency just wasn't a business that we wanted to scale. And from speaking to clients, especially in e-com, they're very much like, oh, well, I just want to post about my products. I just want to talk about my products. And I was like, well, when you're first starting out, the only differentiator really that you have is you. You have to really start telling your stories. And so after a while, they were like, oh, okay, fine. I understand, Deirdre, I get it. But how? How do I tell my stories? And so that actually led to the first iteration of Capsho. So we actually launched that end of last year. And it was very rudimentary. We would prompt people through telling their story. So we had a user describe it as like a combination of Mad Libs and journaling. So we'd prompt them through their story, and then the software would take that and convert it into a bank of social media captions and emails. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is the best thing since sliced bread. It's going to be able to help all entrepreneurs. And so we started being like, okay, how do we now reach all entrepreneurs? And anyone, marketing 101 is like, you have to niche down. Like you just can't reach all entrepreneurs. And that was something our coach at the time really highlighted to us. He was like, no, you've got to niche down. And so when we started thinking about who we would be passionate about serving, as a coach who had a podcast, I was like, and podcasting really is just an audio form of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, it just makes so much sense to focus on podcasters. And so we did. And that's how, this iteration of Capsho came about.
Wow. Okay. So are you like IT techie into software stuff, or like, are you just finding somebody who is and partnering with them?
Yeah, so we have a full-time developer on the team who does all of the coding, like the actual bring it to life. I am very much more strategy and, visionary, like this is where we want to be taking the product.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So I wanted to dive into the traffic pyramid with you today. So can you tell us, your 4 steps to getting unlimited traffic to your content?
Yes, for sure. So there's kind of the way, and you can fully tell from my journey that I have navigated a lot of different environments, brick and mortar, trying to grow brick and mortar, trying to grow online, trying to grow different types of online businesses. And time again, it came back to these 4 fundamental principles of how it is that you can actually reach your audience. And some of them are going to be no-brainer. But I'll just talk to them anyway. So obviously we start with like what I call passive organic marketing. And that is, in other words, things like content creation. It's being on social media. It's having, a blog post or even a podcast, right? It's all the things that you do that we spend time on to just get things out there. The reason why I call it passive is because a lot of times we aren't very intentional with how we actually get eyeballs on our stuff. Mm-hmm. So we put all this time in to create the things, and then we put it out there, and then we kind of sit back and we're like, ooh, tick that box and move on to the next thing. And we just expect that it will somehow get eyeballs on it. And I think this will probably resonate with a lot of people listening to this when we say, how many times have we posted something on social media and we expect it to take off, and it's just like, oh, it's got no engagement, it's gotten no views, all of that. Yep. And that's because we really need to be going into the second tier of what I call the traffic pyramid, which is the active organic marketing. So how do we actually activate the content that we're actually putting out there? So, for example, if we talk about social media, it really is about starting to actually be good citizens of a platform. I was actually talking to someone the other day, and she asked a similar question of like, well, what if we just want to be everywhere? What if we just want to be on all platforms? And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong. Like, if you're just looking to, again, tick a box, there's nothing wrong with being on all platforms with, repurposed content. But we learn in entrepreneurship that the only way that we can grow anything is by focusing, right? Focus on one business, focus on one funnel, focus on one. And it's the same thing marketing. In the marketing space, we need to focus on one channel. And the reason why is because for us to get any kind of visibility, we need to actually know what works on that platform, and be good citizens of it. Social media platforms were designed to be social. So we need to be engaging with our audience, and not just engaging, again, like just being recipients, but going out there and finding who our audience are and starting to have conversations with them and building up that community yourself. Like, that's the only way that you're actually going to, if we talk about social media, actually gain a presence. Unless, of course, I kind of did this with my first business. I kind of rode the wave of Instagram growth. Like, I just kind of like accidentally. So some of us were fortunate enough to do that. Some people have fully found that kind of success on TikTok right now. Yeah. But a lot of the platforms now, it's so saturated. There's a lot of other businesses on there. You need to go out and actually find the people that you want to check you out.
Yeah.
And they will, because when you comment on something or when you start a conversation, that's the first thing that you do is go check you out and what you do. So that's kind of like how we make ourselves active. And if we think about things like blog posts, or, we are talking about things like SEO. It's a lot of work sometimes to put into that. So I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but if they were looking at those kind of channels, there are things that you need to do to be able to activate it. So that's the second tier of the traffic pyramid. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then the third tier is what I call leveraging other people's audiences. And this, to me now seems like a no-brainer, but I also accidentally just stumbled upon this still with my first business, because at the time, when we built it was super naive. We were like, oh my God, we're going to build this amazing dessert bar. It's going to have the best desserts on the planet, and people are just going to come. They're just going to magically find out about it and come. And again, another marketing fundamental rule that I broke, build it and they will come. That did not work. But I remember, so we were struggling for a good 6 months. And I remember there was this one night, it was one of the first Friday nights that my husband and I were able to take off, and we were out at dinner, and it was a Friday night, but we only had 2 people actually working, because that's just how not busy we were. And we get a call from one of our team members, and he's like, I don't have time to explain right now, but you have to come in. We need help. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? Like, did our electricity go out? Like, what is going on? And cause he just hangs up on us. And so we run to the car and we're driving there. And I'm like, I go to drop my husband off and then go find parking. And oh my gosh, the sight, Rachel, in front of our eyes was like magic, because the place was actually packed. We had a line of people waiting to get in.
Wow.
And so, right. And so when I was like, oh my God, how did this somehow happen? Like maybe the build it and they will come strategy does work. Like they just magically did find out about us. But no, what we had done was we had at the time reached out to food bloggers. That was, a big thing. And so they had, for the last, couple months, they had been coming in week on week. And it's not like one made this massive difference, but it was just the momentum, in any particular market that you're trying to, especially when you have niche down. So for us at that time, it was the Sydney food market. Now, for example, it's, experts who podcast with Capsho. So when you can really niche down, then you can find the people who have the audience that you're trying to reach. And the more that you collaborate and work with people in that particular space, the more that others, like your actual audience or your actual customers or clients, will actually just find out about you, because they're like, oh my gosh, this person spoke about them and this person mentioned them and this, but like I have to go check these people out. Yeah. That's just how it works. So, it's such a powerful, this leveraging other people's audiences is such a powerful way to build a presence and ultimately to grow your business. So that's the third tier of the traffic pyramid. And then the fourth tier is really scaling through paid ads. I don't believe, well, I shouldn't say that, because I have built a business. So with our coaching business, a lot of it when we first started was on just through paying for ads. Like that's how we built it. Looking back in hindsight, it was probably not the most sustainable way to do that. You are paying for the eyeballs, but the quality of them is questionable. So that's why I like to go through the other steps first, because when you can nail your content and therefore your messaging, when you know who it is that you're specifically speaking to, because you're actively engaging with them and you're building this community of them, when you actually know who else these people, like what other communities these people are part of, or who else they're following, then scaling through paid ads is actually a really great way, a really great investment, because you know all of these things. Otherwise, if you do what I did, which is try to build a business initially through paid ads, like you're going to be I found I was in a world of hurt, because I just didn't have the other building blocks. So that's kind of why, the traffic pyramid from my perspective, is formed in that way. Passive organic marketing, active organic marketing, leveraging other people's audiences, and then paid ads.
Yeah. So I want to touch on the momentum piece that you mentioned, because I think a lot of times it feels like when you're starting with this, it feels like you're like pushing a boulder up a cliff, and it feels like it's so much work and it's so hard. But eventually, once you're niched down, it's like you get to breathe at some point, and then you have people coming out to you, reaching out to you, asking you, hey, can you speak on my thing? Hey, can you do this? Because you have really established yourself as that go-to expert in your industry.
Yes, totally. Like, and I never really understood. I'm going to be really honest. You know, we hear about, yes, you got to niche down, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess I kind of get it, but I also don't. I'm like, why do I need to niche down? I never really understood it. Now, in terms of my journey, you know, when we look at my first couple of businesses, so in hospitality, we had, fortunately, we'd almost like by luck, or, you know, whatever you call it, just stumbled upon a niche. You know, it was a dessert bar, homemade desserts in Sydney, and not just in Sydney, but in a particular suburb in Sydney. So we had just niched down, we never thought about it, but it just happened, right? Same thing with the burger restaurant. Same thing even when we went into agency work and coaching, because we were like, well, e-commerce, you know, we never really thought, oh, what's our niche? We had done it.
Right.
Our first foray into, because we never thought about it, was when I mentioned Capsho, the first iteration, where that was the first time that we hadn't just accidentally, I guess, niched down.
Yeah.
And like it was such a struggle. It was such a struggle, Rachel, to know, you know, when you think about that traffic pyramid and you're going, okay, well, I need to create content. Who am I creating content for? Like, is it this type of entrepreneur? Is it this type of content creator? Is it this? Like, and so I was finding that I was putting content out and it was just not reaching anyone, because it just was not speaking specifically to any one person.
Yeah.
Even when I was thinking about, okay, well, who am I going to collaborate with? I was like Tony Robbins would be great. But
wouldn't it?
Right? But like, that's not going to happen. So, okay, if it's not Tony Robbins, then who else that is, you know, someone that I can realistically collaborate with, you know, who can I go to, just because I'm trying to speak to everyone. So it just makes it so difficult. And stark contrast to now. So we came up with the idea for this version of Capsho in April. We launched beta June 1st. We went live July 15th. So it's literally 2 months ago to the day that we went live. We have only been in the podcasting industry, I guess, in, you know, let's even say from April, from idea, you know, from having the idea. And already I've got people, like, I've built so many connections in the podcasting industry that I was speaking to someone yesterday. He's like, oh man, you are like such a connector. And I was like, what? How am I? Like, I just don't view myself that way. But then when I think about it, I'm like because I am so like, I just know who it is that I'm speaking to, and I know the people I want to work with. Yeah. And because a big thing about collaboration is such a mindset thing, you know, it's not about how can I take, it's so much of it is how can I give? Yep. How can I give to my collaborators? Because everything's about reciprocity, right? The more that I can give, the more that they're going to give back. That's just how we humans work. And so I was like, oh wow, like this is the difference. I could go from, what is it, like 4 months? In 4 months, I have become this connector in this industry that I am literally brand new to. Yeah. And that is the power of really knowing who it is that you're serving.
Yeah. So for someone who's struggling with their niche and figuring that out, what would you say to them?
Gosh. Okay. I guess it depends on what's making them struggle.
What I see a lot of times is they get in their head.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say it's a mindset thing. It is. It's hard. When our coach was like, you have to niche down, I was like, no, you don't understand. We're different. We're a different business. This is literally the words coming out of my mouth, right? And then you look at that and you go, no, like business is business. We always go back to the fundamentals. When you think about how any business, you know, grew, don't look at the Nordstroms and the Sephoras and the business that are big now. Like that's not how they started. You've got to look at them when they first started.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, so they were just, they were just selling this one thing, or they were just looking in this area. And everyone started with a niche. So from a mindset perspective, it's like you just have to get out of your own head, because otherwise you're never going to grow, and understand that you will get there. Like there will be that opportunity for you to get to that point where you can be the Nordstrom, the Sephora's, and the Tony Robbins, where you can serve everyone. The only way they did that was by really targeting and being able to build up a good amount of revenue and profit there that can help them actually, that they can then reinvest into then scaling that business into other segments and other industries. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. What does that mean to you to make an impact?
So there's so many ways I can answer this. Like my brain's just when I think one of the big reasons as well that we decided to really focus on podcasters is because I can see how much value that they are creating for their audience. And so for me, I was like, well, if we can help these podcasters who have such valuable things to share and teach, if we can help them get their message out there, like imagine the impact that we could have on the world as a business, right? That we can actually be an enabler, an engine for these amazing coaches, consultants, service providers to get their message out there. So I think for me, first and foremost, like that is the kind of impact that I want to have on my immediate community. But broader than that, it's like, how can I, as I said, I love collaborating with people where it's just a win-win, and we can find, like, in any small way that I can help, I will always try to look for it.
Yeah. And what's one of the best books you've read?
I actually just finished reading The Great Rat Race Escape by MJ DeMarco. So that was actually really fascinating. He goes into he's not for everyone, it's just, but I guess not every author's for everyone. But he goes into some really great fundamentals that I think is just so valuable to even brush up on. Sometimes as I was reading, I was like, oh yeah, I know this, but then I'm like, oh, but that's a different way of thinking about it and articulating it and being like, oh, okay, it's sinking in even more. So I actually really enjoyed reading and finishing that book.
Cool. Where can we connect with you?
Yeah, so I am on all the social media channels under Deirdre Tshien, DeirdreTshien. And if you want to try out Capsho, so if you are an expert who podcasts and you hate the copywriting part of it, so you get to the end of your recording and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, now I have to publish this thing and I have to come up with all of my copy, come and try Capsho out for free. We have a free trial. You just go to Capsho, capsho.com. No credit card required. You can just create your account, upload an episode, and see the magic at work.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Deirdre, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a fun chat.